Hey folks, we're out here at my corn plot. This is that garden plot that I built about 3 years ago to grow exclusively corn in, and we've done so. We've grown the Three Sisters, we've grown sweet potatoes, we've grown a whole bunch of stuff. Right here you can see some forsythia that are here that we propagated from scratch from some other trees. And today's the day. It marks the beginning of our winter season, where we have essentially removed all of the vegetative growth that was in this particular corn plot. And I wanted to show y'all how creedmoorfury takes this garden from 2024 and sets it up for 2025. Okay, it's a couple simple steps I'm going to show you, a couple simple things I'm going to do, a couple simple things that you'll be able to duplicate. But once I show you how the cycle works, it's all going to make sense. Let's begin. All right, so here on my right side, you see Exhibit A. Exhibit A is the compost that I made from what we grew in the garden and grew in the pastures this year. Particular compost is going to be laid next year, okay? Instead, what I want to do is I want to show you. I'm going to take you back, roll the calendar back to last year at this time. I'm going to show you what the compost looks like from that part of the process. All right, so here we go. This is last year's compost, and I made it last year from the stuff that was growing in the garden last year. We've had the opportunity to take quite a bit of compost out of this because the pile starts out about 2 to 3 times the size. And throughout the season, we'll make some withdrawals. Throughout the season, it'll get turned. Throughout the season, it'll get better. It's getting cool out. It's no longer really hot in North Carolina, and it makes sense for me to do these tasks now. So I've been asked this question a lot of times. People ask me all the time, how is it that you set your back to Eden garden up for the next season? What do you do at the end of the previous season? What do you do with debris? Well, we're always talking about composting the debris. We're always talking about the next thing that we're going to put down after we grew and harvested is going to be compost. I'm going to put a 2 to 3 inch layer of compost over the top of the corn plot. Then I'm going to lock that compost in with a 2 to 3, maybe 4 inch layer of fresher, younger wood chips. The idea behind this is the fresher, younger wood chips are going to keep the compost from being driven off by heavy rains. They're going to keep the compost in place. They're going to keep the living biology that's contained within the compost essentially held in place where they're going to do the most work, the best work, and become super efficient for the plants we grow. So basically put, if we lay the compost on top of the garden, which is what we would do, we would never rip the wood chips back and put the compost down and then roll the wood chips back on top. That doesn't even make sense. Mother Nature doesn't do that. She puts things down in layers, and that's all we're going to do. Put a layer of this stuff down, it's going to become a fertility amendment to the garden. I don't need fertilizer, I don't need anything else, just the compost that I made from my plants and wood chips. Once I cover that, it's going to protect it, and compost tea will be made as it rains and snows throughout the winter and early spring. They'll be made, and there'll be all of this life-giving effluence that's contained within the garden. And when I go ahead and I sow my plants, when I put my seeds in the ground, the garden will be receptive to this. So I'm going to take you on this little journey where I'm going to put some wood chips. So I should say I'm going to put some compost in my little wagon. I'm going to drive the wagon over there. We're going to spread it all out really quick. Then I'm going to go ahead and show you all up close. We are going to cover whatever vegetative stuff is in the garden already. It doesn't matter. Just going to get covered with compost. There's some beans in there. There's probably some dill in there. There's some other things in there. The roots of my plants are still in there. Many of them are still in there because we just cut them off at the surface. Now I'm going to cover that up. All right, so follow me to load up some really good looking compost into our cart. All right, so here's a quick little walkthrough. I've already taken some time to rake it, get everything nice and smooth. You can see the beans, they're still hanging out over there even though it froze out. All around the edges, there may be some vegetative growth. There could even be some small weeds. There's definitely some seeds. You know, it doesn't matter. I'm going to lay this compost over the top of this. It'll be about 3, maybe 4 inches. I don't know. I got plenty of compost just inside the fenced-in area. That's it. I don't go beyond that. We'll let the fertility seep from here to there, outside that. And that's just my little fence that helps keep the rabbits out. And then there's another fence on the other side that helps to keep the larger animals out. It works, sort of. But this is where we grew the sweet potatoes. They grew really, 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 really well. I can't say that they grew really well enough, but it's true. Just in this little gap right here. I'm thinking about growing them all the way around. this coming season, and we'll put the beans on the other side. But for now, to put this to bed for the winter, I'm going to spread this nice compost right here. Once I get this compost down, y'all can see I've got these wood chips over here. We're going to switch over to using these wood chips. I'm going to lock it in with these wood chips. Then, when I'm out here cutting the field grasses and taking care of the pastures, when the seeds are cut and put up into the air and the winds, they're going to land on top of this, but they're not going to grow because this stuff is really fresh. I get 6 to 9 months of resistance out of this stuff, all right? See how that goes. Y'all want to see me rake some? All right, so here you can see I went ahead and I used the pitchfork to basically spread this stuff out. And then I used my 16-inch rake to rake it all out as smooth as I could. It did amount to about 4 inches of compost. You can see, if you look really close or you zoom in on your screen, you'll be able to see that there is some parent media that didn't break down. Generally speaking, when we use this method and we make a lot of compost, we're utilizing some wood chips with the rest of our green manure and our round manure. And the wood chips take the longest to break down. Sufficient time has passed. The compost is very high quality. We've sifted it to make soil for germination. In this particular concentration, it's going to work beautifully because we do tend to plant a lot of plants in this small amount of space. Additionally, corn is a very, very hungry grass. It takes a lot of NPK, CMN, CJ, all those initials that y'all are used to hearing in traditional agriculture. It takes a lot of that stuff to keep corn happy. Compost does it. It does it all by itself. My best year growing corn was growing in exclusively compost with wood chips over the top, year 1. Year 2, we grew some good corn. Year 3, we grew better corn, and this is probably going to do even better because now, each year, it tends to get better and better and better and better. But you can see here what we did. We've got it laid out. It's very nice. It's very rich. It's very soft. I can compress it easily. The compost is sticking to the bottom of my shoes. That's how I know we've done well, because our compost maintains a specific amount of hydration to it at all times. I kind of try to oversee that to make sure it doesn't dry out. If my compost dries out, what ends up happening is the soil biology, the microbes that are living in it, tend to stress. That's another reason why I don't want to leave this compost exposed to the sunlight. I'm also making these applications later in the day, so it's not dealing with the harshest sunlight before I get the wood chip cover on top. So the next step is to get the wood chip cover on top to lock it all in. Makes it like one happy garden, one happy ecology of things, if you will. And after I get that layer in, you're going to see it basically looks like it did before. But you know, and I know, and the video will attest to the fact that there's a nice thick layer of compost. We did not put manure in here. We didn't go out and scrape for things. We didn't put anything that wasn't essentially broken down, wasn't thermophilically broken down into here. So I know there's going to be very low incidence of disease causing microbes within the soil matrix. Certainly I'm not adding any because we've had quite a bit of practice making compost, and that gives me a reasonable reassurance that when I go back to planting this in the spring, the seeds are going to germinate well, they're going to pop up, and they're going to already run for planthood very, very quickly. So let me go ahead, get some wood chips on top, and show you what that looks like. As you can see, this stuff was dropped off very recently. It's about a week old, if that, and I want it to be young. I want it to be fresh because inside this fresh wood chip cutting here, there's lots of tannic acids. There's lots of acids that are going to be essentially restrictive to the germination of seeds that drop on top. When I put my seeds and my plants in the spring, I'm going to put them in that rich compost layer that you see there. They're not going to go in here. All right? We know they'll grow in the soil, but they won't grow as well in the wood chips. And that is why we use this to keep the weeds and the Bermuda grasses that blow in from growing right into the middle of our gardens and making life miserable. Alright, so I got enough wood chips here to begin. Basically what you can see me doing here is covering the compost right up to the fence. I'm even going to take some of these wood chips and go on the outside of the fence. And the reason we do that is because I want to keep the wood chips on the outside boundary built up just as well as the wood chips on the inside. But there's no reason to put compost out there since the only thing that we're growing is beans, and the beans seem to do fine in some aged wood chips. Really don't need very good soil at all, actually. All right, so I finished raking everything out, finished pushing everything all over the place, and I want to talk about a couple of keynotes, some things that are kind of important. Number one, why was there a pumpkin in the garden? And it's one of the three sisters. You can see it sitting right here. It's basically on the northwestern side of the garden, and the sun comes in on the east side, and it's going to tend to grow that way and towards the west. So this will start here and it will end up over there outside of the garden. All right, so that's why this is here. The real reason why we keep something like that in there is because it's basically it's a litmus test for fertility. This is going to pop up and it's going to start to grow that way even before I've even put any corn in the ground. Okay, so there you have it. I have a litmus test over here sitting here. Y'all can use beans, but you can see I've already got beans. There's beans everywhere. We know they'll grow beans, and we know it'll grow everything else. But this is basically it. And you can see what I didn't do was I didn't pay close attention to what type of wood chips are going onto the garden, because I already was aware there's some arborvitae, there might be a little bit of cedar, there's some pine, and there's some oak. I saw plenty of oak leaves. I'm not terribly concerned with the cedar that might be in here, because we're going to have many months before I plant anything in this. The cedrol that might be contained in the cedar, the juglone that might be contained in any walnut, it's going to essentially be mitigated by the microbial influence underneath it, by the rain, by the snow, and by dissolution. The solution is basically just to dissolve it with more of everything else. So you don't have to be worried about whether or not you've got a pile of those things, unless that's the only type of wood chip you have. Generally speaking, on the whole, I don't ever just get walnut. I don't just get cedar. Usually they're mixed with other things. If they're not mixed with other things, I might be just a little bit more mindful about that. If I only had walnut and only had cedar, I might select tasks that are better for those types of wood. In particular, if I only had something that contained juglone, like black walnut wood chip, I might consider growing alliums, might consider growing lots of garlic and onions, because they grow just fine in that stuff. So even if I was to use that as a top cover, I'd still be planting my seeds below. Those seeds could come up. They could possibly be impacted by the allelopathic compounds in those trees. But if we get this down good and early, and it has all winter long to essentially convert, you're not going to have very much difficulty in the spring. So anyway, if you like the content, if you get the gist, you understand the concepts, please feel free to follow me back to Eden. In addition to, yeah, there's my guy down there on the floor, my partner in crime. Yes, that's my baby. Anyway, you're going to see more of him in future videos, future installments, because we just love him, and because, well, he's attached to the camera person right now. So, anyway, like, subscribe, share, God bless, and go garden yourself.